Brought to you by Penguin.
Wreckers: Disaster in the Age of Discovery by Simon Park. To Mum, Dad, Richard, Oliver and Alice. Introduction: A disasterful view of history. At the end of the 15th century, men in ships set off from the ports of Europe into the unknown. Tenacious, intrepid, they crossed oceans never before traversed and found lands they had never dreamed of. But that's far from the full story. When it comes to the first century of European transcontinental voyages by sea and the empires that were built on the back of them, we are too addicted to an action hero version of history. Triumphant beginnings with swashbuckling protagonists. Even recent books that challenge the history of empire struggle to avoid casting European captains as heroes who pushed forward the boundaries of knowledge. Yet building and maintaining an empire was not just a matter of reaching a faraway destination. It was, instead, a violent, messy, improvised process that took place over a long period of time. Disaster frequently struck early colonizers, and when it did, the foundations of empire trembled, even if the edifice did not immediately fall. Individuals, rulers, and communities across the world rejected explorers, laughed at them, and often set the rules of engagement in trade and territorial expansion, despite European attempts to determine the world agenda with their weapons and their arrogance. In his searing exposition of the history of European colonization and its after-effects in Latin America, the Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano provocatively concluded that development is a voyage with more shipwrecks than navigators. In the original Spanish, however, the word given as shipwreck in the translation is naufrago, which refers more to the person wrecked than the vessel smashed apart. The slippage in the translation is slight, but important. Galeano is more interested in people than in ships. And so too is this book. Wreckers is about people who are wrecked, but also people who might be involved in the act of wrecking, and not just ships. The cast of characters in the chapters that follow occupy both these roles, wrecker and wrecked, hostage taker and hostage to fortune. The central premise of this book is to underline that both these facets of voyaging were at play during the age of so-called discovery, and that during the 16th century itself, tales of disaster, failure, resistance, and comeuppance circulated widely and were as integral to comprehending empire as any bloated propaganda. Overall, this book offers an alternative timeline of the 100 years after Columbus first crossed the Atlantic and reached the Caribbean in 1492. One that brings out the fractures and fault lines that accompanied the increasing geographical range of European ships. I have gathered stories from across languages and continents which entangle us in the allegiances and rivalries, fighting and fighting back, short tempers and blunders that were part and parcel of imperial advances. These stories show that the tide was often set against Europeans, not to lionize their efforts further by suggesting they succeeded against the odds, but to put them back into proper perspective. As we follow Europeans on their voyages, we learn that they did not just depart out of insatiable curiosity and the spirit of adventure. Europeans knew that West Africa, China, and India abounded in goods and gold, so they set their course to these places, seeking a slice of their riches. They left then with a sense of lack and of envy usually concealed by noisy arrogance. They hoped that their risky ventures would change their country's fortunes. But the wreckers' green eyes often led to sinking ships. They stacked them too high with merchandise or bankrupted investors by mistaking worthless rocks for treasure. They killed, abducted, and enslaved. Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Gonzalo Guerrero, Ferdinand Magellan, Jean-François de la Roque, Marguerite de Roberval, Hans Staden, Manuel and Leonor de Souza de Sepulveda, Martin Frobisher. My cast of Spaniards, Portuguese, French, Germans, English get kidnapped, stranded, abandoned, and betrayed. Most wash up on...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?